Hi folks, this is Mark Ballawender and I'm the instructor for Philosophy 353 Peace and Justice Studies. This is the welcome video. It's from my mobile office. I'm actually in my minivan right now. I just stepped out to get a haircut. I've got a really young daughter at home, 8 or 9 months old, and she's a lot of fun to play with, so sometimes it's hard to get work done at home, so I get a little work done in my car sometimes. Welcome to the course. This course is a fully online philosophy course. It's part of the Peace and Justice specialization. It's one of the core courses that you can take for it. And this is the first time it's being offered in a fully online version. So it's a sort of a new experiment for the philosophy department, and it's the first time I've done a fully online course myself. So what I want to do is just lay out a few of the topics of the course, and then I want to tell you what the main activities are going to be for the course, because it's very different from a standard philosophy course that meets in a classroom and has lectures and reading and writing. Um, this course is a general overview in topics in peace and justice studies. Since it's a summer course and it's quite compressed, I've narrowed down the number of topics a little bit. We're going to do four main modules in the course. The first module, which the modules take about a week and a half each, they're laid out in the syllabus. The first module is going to look at the question of violence and human nature. There's been a long, ongoing anthropological, biological, philosophical, and historical debate about whether human beings are violent because of their own human nature, and whether that makes us inclined to cause wars and have wars, and whether wars are going to be a perpetual feature of human societies, or whether there's something that could be eliminated. We're starting out this section reading Hobbes and Rousseau, two really important philosophers in early modern political philosophy. Um, I'll post a video about them, introducing them on the blog after this. And there are sort of introduction myths for human nature. They've got their own ideas about human nature, and whether human beings are sort of naturally violent or not. But after that, we move on and we read some historians and some anthropologists and some psychologists who all have their own sorts of explanations of why human beings go to war, whether there's an explanation in human nature for why human beings go to war. And basically, we hear from a lot of different voices and have quite a bit of different thinkers to draw from in discussing this general question of whether human beings are sort of by their nature violent, or whether this is a feature of human societies. As Margaret Mead, one of our authors, puts it, war is an invention, not a historical necessity. Um, that's the first section, the first module of the course. The second module of the course um, has a goal of expanding our theoretical notions of violence. So part of peace and justice studies is understanding the concept of violence, defining violence, trying to look at how we categorize actions as violent or as nonviolent. And this section has as a goal the expansion of the notion of violence away from what we're going to call direct violence. So direct violence is what you would normally think of as violence, a war, people attacking each other, intentional physical harm caused to other people. In this second section, we're going to be looking at two kinds of violence. One's called structural violence, and one's called symbolic violence. And these are attempts by theorists to expand the notion of what counts as violence away from these direct violent examples that are pretty typically taken as the general notion of violence. So in this section, we'll be looking at poverty, sexism, racism, certain features of human society, prejudices, as well as like economic arrangements that cause harm to people, and for that reason can be thought of as violent. After that, we have a long module on the psychological effects of violence and causes of violence in people, where we take a lot of readings from the history of colonialism, World War II, the Holocaust, post-colonialism, the struggle for freedom in Africa. Um, and look at how different people have classified what violence has done, phenomenological descriptions of torture. It's quite a large module that packs in a bit there. That's probably the largest of the four modules. And then the final topic section of the course looks at nonviolent action as an alternative to violence, and also sort of as a form of power that's not a violent form of power. There's a lot of really interesting ethical questions about nonviolence. It's a very effective form of political power, as we've seen in the last few years. For instance, in Egypt, the Arab Revolution. So we're gonna look at that phenomenon and discuss some of the ethical issues with nonviolent power. So those are the topics for the course. It's sort of a wide range of topics in peace and justice studies, but they do interrelate with each other, and we'll be able to use authors from one section to discuss authors in the other section. So how is the course going to work? That's sort of a question I've been thinking about all year as I've been designing this course. From what I've read about online courses, sort of what I'm doing right now, lecturing to you by video, is not the best way to teach students. I know that folks have a tendency to zone out when you're watching internet video after a few minutes. It's not really that engaging to sort of watch somebody on a screen. So for that reason, this course is not going to rely heavily on recorded lectures, audio or video. Instead, most of the learning is going to take place on a blog, where I'm going to post lessons about specific questions or topics, um, particular groups of readings, and I'm going to provide introductions to them. I may have short recordings to introduce them, but I'm going to try to keep it under 5 minutes or so that you don't your eyes don't glaze over and you don't zone out. Um, and then you'll have the ability to comment on those questions, respond to them below the blog posts, and you'll have the ability to make your own blog posts. So as you think of questions, comments, issues in the readings that you want to discuss, you can create your own posts, and other folks in the course can respond to them. And the blog is basically going to be our central hub for activity in the course. It's a large part of your grade. You're required to participate in it, and it's where I'm looking for most of the action in the course to take place. That's where we want to be expressing our voices, discussing things, asking questions, responding to questions. Um, uh, Most of the activity is going to happen on the blog. So there's instructions about how to access that on Angel, and you should be able to access them and see those now. Um, so that's the main part of the course that is unique and new and experimental, and is an attempt to adopt a kind of discussion-based, heavily readings and discussion-based philosophy course to an online environment. The second sort of unique feature of the course that's an attempt to adopt it to an online environment is the conference calls that we're going to be recording. So what I'm going to do is break up the class. We have about 35 students into 7 groups of 5, and each week 2 or 3 of those groups are going to be responsible for getting together and recording an informal discussion about a certain group of readings, a small chunk of the readings, so 2 or 3 of the readings from the module that's going on that week. You'll be required to meet or communicate beforehand to plan out sort of who's responsible for which particular reading or which particular topic within that reading, and what sorts of questions you want to ask about them, and submit a sort of document to me that is your plan for the discussion. So it's not just going to be, hey, we meet up and we just start talking about it. It has to have a little bit of pre-planning about who is going to be doing what. Once that's submitted, and that's worth 50% of the grade for the actual recording for everybody, then you meet a few days later, and you have a chat for, I'd like to keep them around 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, but we'll see how that goes. It could be shorter, it could be longer, depending on what you end up with. But you're just going to get together and have a small conversation as if you're sitting around a table, and this will all be happening using Skype on your computer. So you'll just call each other using the conference call feature of Skype. I guess that does mean that one of the requirements for the course is that you need a laptop or a desktop computer that has a microphone on it that you can use to make online calls. So you'll just get together and you'll chat with each other about some of these topics from those particular readings, a small group of readings from that week. There'll be one person who will be the technical recorder of the conversation, and at the end of it, you'll have a 20 or 25-minute file that somebody will send to me as an MP3, the recorder will send to me as an MP3, and I'll post that up on the blog. And the goal of this is to sort of have, you get to know each other in small groups where it's comfortable to speak with each other. Um, and so that you can create a kind of audio document of a discussion, a pre-planned and well-prepared discussion about materials in the course that other folks can access and that we can download and listen to on our MP3 players or in our cars or on our smartphones or whatever, so that we get sort of something to replace the kind of live discussion that goes on in a philosophy course. So that's the second sort of main new experimental online component. The first is the blog, and the second are these recorded conference calls. And if any of this is confusing, which I'm sure it is at the very start here, take a look at the syllabus and the descriptions of these things on Angel, and post your questions on the blog as well, and I'll try to respond to them. Other than those two components, which together comprise 50% of your grade, so participation in those and how well you do at the recordings, and your comments and posts on the blog, those are going to count as 50% of your grade. The other 50% of your grade is the sort of standard stuff that you find in a philosophy course. So there's going to be 2 essay assignments that are short essay assignments. You're going to have to answer 4 questions, 2 to 3 pages each. Specific questions about the readings or clusters of the readings, how they relate to each other. There's already the first assignment posted on Angel. You can take a look and see what it's like. There's 2 of those assignments. They're due sort of at the middle of the summer session, and then right at the end. And then there's going to be a final paper on a topic of your choosing, which is a little bit longer, and you have a lot of freedom about how you want to approach that, the topics that you want to do. An abstract, your sort of proposal for what you want to do for that is due around the middle of the session, and then there'll be a rough draft of that due towards the end. I'll try to get you some feedback on your rough draft, and the final paper is due the last day of class. So you'll have these kinds of writing assignments that are the other half of your grade for the course. So the activities for the course are, of course, reading. It's pretty heavily reading involved. There's a lot of readings. You've got to keep up with the readings, and I've got a document that I'll post up on the blog about how to approach the readings to get the most out of them, and so you don't waste time going back and trying to figure out what you read before. How to do an active reading. So reading is the first sort of main core activity of the course. Can't get by without that. Then posting and commenting on the blog is the second activity. Recording conference calls, which everybody's group will record 2 of those conference calls throughout the semester. And then finally, the writing assignments. And those 4 things together are what we're going to be doing for the course. So hopefully that makes sense. I guess I should say a little bit about myself. My name's Mark Ballawender. I guess I sort of skipped that right at the beginning there. I'm a grad student in philosophy, and my area of research is on the politics of nonviolent action. So I'm looking at some of the questions that we're going to be discussing in the final module of the course in depth, and I'm trying to present some ethical problems about nonviolence and resolve them. So I'll tell you more about that during the semester. So a little bit more about myself. I'll try to drop little tidbits of things as we go on through the semester, but I have a new kid. She's 9 months old. I've been in Lansing for a long time here in my PhD program. What else about myself? My family is Polish. I speak Polish, and I'm really into outdoor sports, so I love backpacking and canoeing and mountain biking and things like that. So I'll try to drop little hints so you can get to know me throughout the semester as I post these videos. So hello and welcome to the course.